when I talk about vegetarianism to my dad, he goes, well, I've been, people have always eaten meat. Okay, animals eat meat. Well, animals, dogs sniff each other's asses. We don't do that. But also to say we've always done it is what we've always done it. We've always eaten meat is an argument. There's all sorts of things we've always done. Subjugated women. We've always done. So we, crack on with that. Enslave people. Well, we always have. All right. Well, that's fine then. Let's carry on doing. It's mad. It's a mad argument. And you will have people who say that with like, alcohol, the Plato did it or whatever bullshit they come up with. Yeah, it's probably true, but it doesn't mean you don't need to change your attitude to it. Ordinary toilets aren't designed for blokes to wee in, unless you're very short or very long in another sense. Then you're gonna miss the target. So since I had room, why not just stick a urinal in? It's nice. It's a knob height. In it goes. Even got a little lid. Flush it. Bob's your uncle.
Yep. Perfect.
Good clap, mate.
Thank you, Adrian.
It's not easy to do well.
It's not easy. No, it's not easy. It's very hard, this job. Adrian Chiles, hello.
Oh yeah.
How are you? Yeah, I'm good. Welcome to the Harlequin, one of our favourite pubs.
This is exactly my kind of pub.
Yeah.
I do love pubs, and as long as it's not packed.
A low murmur of chat.
Yeah.
Hushed tones.
Occasionally rising and then falling, sort of undulating noise. That's about it, really. I'm not fussed about any other aspect. Telly can be there or not. Maybe a fruit machine as I can keep it quiet. A bit of music.
My first question to you was going to be, what would you like to drink? But I've already realised I've jumped the gun by asking you what your favourite pub is.
Yeah.
So what would you like to drink, Adrian?
I'll have an alcohol-free, since we are recording this at lunchtime.
Perfect. And I'll break that rule and have a Guinness as well.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be ferried over to our table imminently. First things first, Steve Bruce is out the door.
Yes.
How are you feeling about that?
Thank you very much.
And cheers.
But I think it probably isn't the biggest problem there is with our club, given given we don't really know who the owner is or what he wants or whatever. But we should have been doing better with that squad that we had. And I've got this thing about football managers. I think after every football manager's name, there's a number, and that number is the number of games, consecutive games he can lose before getting the sack. And everyone's got that number, so I spoke to a Leeds fan this morning, an old Ted Lasso at Leeds. 6, maybe?
Yeah.
6 consecutive losses. Who's playing above themselves this year, who's doing really well in the Premier League.
Brentford.
Sorry?
I like Brentford, they're doing well.
Brentford are doing well. We're doing well. A bad result last week, but Brentford, he's probably got, given the size of the club, he's probably got 9 games. Frank's got 9 games lose before he goes. But even like Guardiola, if they lost the next 9 games at Man City, he'd be getting jumpy. Yeah. I think. But anyway, the point I'm making is that Steve Bruce has been on 1 game for months now, and it's finally happened.
I'm a blue nose, so I'm well acquainted with him.
Yeah.
And you've talked about numbers there, and perhaps our number has been a bit too high in the past.
Yeah.
I don't know, or not.
Blue nose, a blues.
Yeah.
A blues nose. Oh, good for you.
We're here to talk about your book, The Good Drinker. It's about alcohol. It's about your relationship with alcohol and your changing relationship with alcohol. So tell us about it, and specifically why your relationship with drinking has changed.
Well, it sort of arose out of a programme I did, a TV programme called Drinkers Like Us, which I suddenly thought one day, hang on, I drink most days. In fact, I drink every day, unless I'm working late on a programme, and Thursday evenings I used to work quite late, so I never drank on a Thursday. But I drank sort of every day, and then if there was a social occasion, say my 20 best friends were coming along, and I wasn't going to be able to drink, I probably wouldn't even go. I wouldn't be looking forward to it. And and then if a friend came to see me, a friend came to see Anson for a while. He's a judge, actually. And I used to drink a lot with him at university, and he said, he turned up and he said, "What you drinking?" He said, "Oh, I'm driving. I'll just have a half." And I literally felt insulted. It was like, I mean, it almost felt to me like, "What is this? Is this all I mean to you?"
Yeah.
No.
I know that feeling.
You know, I mean, and it's madness. It's absolute madness. So drinking a lot, I didn't realise how much till I started counting it. I realised I was drinking more and more with every decade that went past. And yet, by any definition that most of us work with as to what is a problem drinker or what is this thing we call alcoholic, I didn't conform to that. I wasn't sleeping on a park bench. I wasn't waking up with anyone I didn't know who they were. I didn't know, I wasn't waking up in a shop doorway. I wasn't drinking Pernod in the morning. I wasn't even getting hangovers, and I was successful.
You're quite good at drinking.
Well, I was too good at drinking is the actual problem. But the point was, if you're drinking that much, to some extent you're dependent. So, and because we have this idea of alcohol as a disease, which is increasingly they're trying to get away from, the medics are, as I understand it, people think, well, I haven't got the disease, therefore I'm fine. Well, actually, I wasn't fine. In fact, the first day that I genuinely didn't know, it's incredible, but I thought, hang on, am I a big enough drinker to do this programme? And then the first day we were at home to Liverpool at West Brom, and there's a pub called The Vine near the ground where I met some mates there, and it was a lunchtime kick-off, so I was in there about 10:30, and I had 4 pints of Guinness, which is on the high side, especially at that time, especially before a lunchtime kick-off, but by no means unheard of. So I had 4 pints of Guinness, and we were filming. And then went to the game, we drew, and then I got the train back to London. I didn't have anything to drink in the afternoon. And then there was my mate's 40th birthday party at some place in the East End somewhere. And there I had, it was quite warm. I had a couple of pints, and then the mandatory champagne for toast, and then probably half, maybe more, bottle of red wine. And then I was ready for bed, and we went back, but then went to that Soho House place, which it never suit me, those places. They're just full of the kind of people I try and avoid at work, generally. Anyway, went in there, so I had another lager pressed in my hand. I mean, I didn't feel drunk. It didn't feel like a big drinking day to me. It was just
constant.
Just constant. But I mean, it didn't feel exceptional. And then the following morning, they came round to my flat and filmed me as I counted my units. I'd never done that before. And I'd had 36 units, I think it was, in one day.
Weekly is what, 14?
Weekly is 14 units.
That's the limit, sorry, yeah.
Well, it's the guidelines for the most you can drink without risking harm. I thought, this is absolute madness. And then once I worked it out, I was easily drinking 100 units a week. Because I'd meet a mate most nights in the pub just for a couple, nothing mad. Some nights we might have more than a couple or have a bottle of wine. And then you throw in, a long lunch in the week or a Sunday lunch and throw in a couple of big nights out. You're at 100 units before you know where you are. At least I was.
And some people might say to you, well, you got to go cold turkey. You got to stop drinking. But this book, you're talking about not doing that.
No,
You've got your own 12 steps as well, haven't you?
Look, I'm very clear that stopping completely, there are merits to stopping completely. Not least it's straightforward. It's one kind of decision you have to make. And for some people, it's probably appropriate. It's definitely, I think, a good idea if you are drinking a lot, although actually I didn't do this, but it's just stopped completely for 3 months. And in the words of somebody I spoke to, it was, he said, I'm just taking some time off to decide what kind of drinker I want to be. And I thought that was a really good way of putting it. But I think this idea that the only way is to stop, I think that puts the fear of God into a lot of people who don't seek help. Because they think, well, they're frightened to death of some doctor. I know I was. Some doctor turning around to me and saying, you've got to just stop completely. It's the only way. So you know, that's an unplanned sort of outcome of this idea that you should just stop, and that, you know, I just found a way of drinking less, I suppose, and wanted to share that. But, you know, I'm not against stopping completely.
Would you? So a friend of mine has a list of his top 5 nights out of all time, and it's a sliding scale, but all of them are alcohol fueled. So I wanted to ask you if you have a recollection of some of the best nights in your life, and whether any of them have taken place without alcohol.
Shamefully, probably no. Not necessarily that I were smashed or anything.
Yeah.
There was probably alcohol involved, but in each case, it. Oh yeah. Sorry. Quiet. You don't like smoking orange. Hey, quiet. Shut up now. Hey. Come on.
Tito scared the life out of me.
Sorry, that's my dog there.
Oh my gosh.
He's quite racist when it comes to orange people. Orange jacket. I'm sorry.
The orange fleece.
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. Where were we? Yeah.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Go on.
But if I should make a list. Actually, I will do that. My 5 greatest nights ever. Drink would always been involved, but I would suspect there would be a West Brom win in there somewhere, a big win.
Yeah.
I also suspect I'd be with a load of close friends. Right. So, as Lee Mack puts it in my book, when I spoke to him, he said, drink gets too much of the credit. So I'll be going, oh, there's drink, yeah. It's because the drink I wasn't. I mean, look, it might not have been unhelpful, don't get me wrong, but, you know, it must have meant something that the Albion had won, or more importantly, that I was with with a group of my closest friends. So that makes it good.
Yeah, I guess an example would be like a wedding, right? You know, you're surrounded by your nearest and dearest close family, your best friends, and everyone's drinking, but is the reason why it's such a good time because you're drinking, or is it because everyone you care about is in one place?
Who knows? I mean, and the drug itself is probably doing something to convince you of that. You know, so it's, look, I'm not saying drink's a wholly bad thing throughout the book. I can still make a case for it, but it just needs managing.
Yeah.
You know, like I've read, I've done a lot about sort of religion, right? And I got to thinking with religion that, I did a programme briefly when I was asked to say, could you be a Muslim, could you be Jewish? And, it's the kind of thing that happens when an atheist commissions a TV programme, right? But, very quickly travelling around Europe, talking to Muslims, Jews and Christians, I realised it was absolutely nothing to do with the actual religion. It was just where they are on the spectrum between evangelical loony and sort of quite progressive, liberal, tolerant on the other side. And I've got much more in common with a liberal, tolerant Muslim or Jew than I have with most Christians, actually, certainly from the head-banging sort of crazy, evangelising, sort of, intolerant end. So the point I'm making in a very roundabout way is that the problem isn't religion. It's what you do. It's what you do with it. So it's a bit like fire. Fire keeps you warm. You can't live without heat, or it can burn you up. Water, you can drown in it, but you also need it to live. And I think alcohol's a bit like that. It's not so much the thing in itself. It's how you actually, what you actually do with it. You use it as a social lubricant, as a bonding thing. That's good, but when it goes beyond that and it's in charge of you and it's calling all the shots, that's when you get problems.
Yeah. Absolutely, it does make sense to me. Was there a mental health component? Because obviously, most obviously, alcohol is a depressant. I mean,
Well, for me, though I wasn't outwardly noticing any effects of ill health. I mean, it turned out that under examination, self-examination, and medical examination, I realised there were 4 things that were probably related to alcohol. And number 1 of those was anxiety, stroke, depression, which, I'd struggled with. The second was reflux, constantly getting to the indigestion. That's alcohol's a big factor in that. Third, blood pressure. Now, alcohol's the biggest known cause of blood pressure. And then, kind of most importantly, I had a liver scan and there was some build-up of fatty tissue, you know, things were going wrong with my liver. So, because I was such a good drinker, as you so correctly put it, that's not a good thing. In the sense that your early warning systems aren't there, and it's drinkers like me who end up getting into problems because they've got no reason to stop. When anyone says you need to drink less, you kind of say, well, why would I? It's not affecting me really. You know, it's not affecting me outwardly. I mean, briefly, there was an ex-MP I spoke to when I was making the documentary, and something he said sticks in my head. I was playing golf with him at some charity thing, and I told him I was making the programme, and he said, oh, I'm not, I don't drink much because, he said, fortunately I'm blessed with hangovers. And it really struck me. I thought, yeah, he's right. That's exactly how to look at hangovers. Hangovers are, you know, a God's brakes, or, you know, Mother Nature's brakes on you, telling you to slow down. In the absence of that, kind of, why would you?
And I guess as well, there's medication, those things you've spoken about, those four sort of factors in your health. There's medications, right? You know, I think you've spoken before about being prescribed antidepressants, or, you know, amphetamines for ADD, or, you know, blood pressure, anything like that. And you can almost end up in a bit of a cycle or a contributing thing where if you're going through a tough time in your life, you can end up using alcohol, other substances as a crutch, as a coping mechanism. I know I have before in the past.
See, interestingly, I haven't. If with me, it's generally more about having a good time, rather than, with the exception of, so I go through phases sometimes when I'm just utterly down, thoroughly sort of anxious, full of sort of butterflies, and just feeling dead, or just really kind of sort of anxious. And that at those times, just 1 or 2 pints takes the edge off it. It comes back, but not any worse. Now again, I'm lucky, you know, because maybe if it needed 8 pints to put that fire out, then, you know, we'd be having a different conversation now. You know, but it's, you know, I'm sort of lucky, you know, yes, I would put my hands up on those occasions. I'm self-medicating, but look, it's a pint or 2, literally only that, because I don't know, I'm frightened where I might go if I had more than that.
It's interesting because I think my drinking has sort of mirrors life events, you know, difficult moments, this, that, and the other. And you're saying actually, in your case, you never felt that way before.
No, but I mean, there's always an excuse to drink. With me, it's I've had a good time. Sometimes because I've had a bad time. It's like as Roy Keane put it to me. He said, well, you know, there's always a reason. Funeral, a wedding. You know, your kids have done something good, done something bad. There's always an excuse. There's always an excuse to drink. And just like looking back, I mean, it was really emotional for me. Not emotional exactly, but yeah, it was sort of emotional. Just looking back at my drinking through the decades, teenager, 20s, 30s, and just working out just how much drink I'd poured through myself. But, you know, and I mean, what was I thinking? It's been, you know, I'm 55 now. It's just been so important my whole life. You know, it's just a bit, it's just, you know, it's just mad. And one of the light bulb moments I had, I worked out that if you lined up all the drinks I'd had in my life, it would be about 3 miles long in the last 40 years since I was 15, roughly. It might be more, might be less, but the point is, loads. Now, I mean, it's bad enough to have poured all that poison through your system. All right, I'll live with that, if I have benefits of it. But if I ask myself, how many of those drinks did I really need or want or enjoy? How many had a purpose to them? I reckon it's about 30%. It's certainly less than half. The rest of the time, I've just been drinking for the sake of drinking. Drinking, like, now I've had that. But, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, I'm in a pub. Why wouldn't I? Yeah. And I'll probably stay and have 2 or 3. I'll probably stay and have 2 or 3 more. So I just think it's just a question of being mindful. All I've done is take out the drinks I, by and large, didn't want, need or enjoy, and then just left myself with the ones I do want, need or enjoy. You know, and if you can change your thinking to achieve that, you can do yourself some good, I think.
Have you read Pour Me a Life by A.A. Gill, his memoir?
Oh no, I haven't.
I'd really recommend it.
Yeah.
Other than being beautifully written, it documents his alcoholism and its brutality in quite a confronting way. I mean, in sort of all its piss-soaked morning tremors, he details a scene where he like rigs himself up a little pulley system so he can lift his head to drink a glass of scotch in the morning because he's shaking so much. What you're talking about is not that.
No,
it's very clear, but it's more innocuous. But
yeah. I mean, that's the problem. That's why. I mean, the point is, most of the drinkers who present with liver disease in the end are drinkers like me, rather than drinkers like you described A.A. Gill was. Because there's more of us. Yes, if you drink like that, obviously because you're drinking more, you're more likely to get into health difficulties. But most drinkers are in the category I sort of remain in, although at the lower end of it. But I've been sort of gratified by there's a number of people I've spoken to who've just given up drink. I mean, and two of them I can think of from the book. One guy who advised me, and another one who wrote a brilliant book called From Down and Out to Sober Forever or something. A brilliant woman. It's a really, I mean, I think it was self-published, but it's a really good account of it. Sounds along the lines of what you said. So I always feared their reaction to the book. But I mean, so far everyone I've met, and I'm sure there's going to be people who don't take this attitude, but they've all said, well, I wish I'd had this early, I wish. They're not saying to me, oh, this is pointless. Some people, it's just predetermined they're going to be like that. Nothing would have helped me.
The reason why I'm talking about this is Gill wrote in his sobriety, I think one of the best ever descriptions of British drinking culture and its philosophy. And I'd like to quote it.
Yeah, go on.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
At length. He's gone for a ride along with the police commissioner on a Saturday night in Cleethorpes. As the commissioner drives me back to the train station in the dawn, he asks why we can't drink like the Continentals. A glass of wine with some tapas in a cafe, all ages together. A glass of beer, an aperitif, then the passeggiata, dressing up smartly. Why can't we change the culture? I look at him and keep my mouth shut. At the station, a fox trots down the line. A drunk is sprawled over a bench. Why don't we drink like the Greeks or the Italians? Really? Because we have a choice. That's why. Because we're from the north, from the cold, from the drizzle, from the place where the moon drives us nuts. Who would want to drink like an Italian granny? Sip wine with a raised pinky, chew a carrot, when you could be out there with all your mates, people you fancy, people you don't, people you shag, people you wanted to. You can go mad, get totally muntered. You can let go. Why have a polite chat when you can have a legend? When you can weave a myth that will last you all week, that will stay with you forever? Why would you want to ponce about in the grottos of Dionysus when you can get trolleyed in the mead halls of Valhalla? This is who we are. This is what we do. Or what I did. Do you still have a legend? Do you think you ever will again?
Yeah, I'm sure I will, but I doubt it'll be about getting absolutely smashed. I mean, he's dead right. There is that Northern European model of drinking. But I mean, plenty of people run into trouble with alcohol in Southern Europe as well. But I mean, I get it about plainly, we're all part of that. I remember, I don't think the drinking age helps. I remember my dad saying when I was 15, he said, difficult time for your son, you're too young to stay at home, you're too old to stay at home all the time, but you're too young to go to the pub. So the pub is then set up as the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the holy grail, the answer to life's question, eternal question, like, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the pub. So it's sort of set up. It's set up as a thing, but it is. I think the assumption, and I mean that is brilliant. It's not a criticism of it, but certainly it's up there with the assumption I think a lot of us make. Certainly I made that everybody drinks like that. Yeah. And in fact, it's a minority who drink like that. If you ask a drinker, what percentage of all drinkers, so forget about recovering alcoholics, anyone not drinking for whatever reason, religious or whatever, you ask drinkers, what percentage of drinkers are drinking within the guidelines, i.e. 14 units or less a week? I mean, usually you will be told, oh, none, or maybe 5%. But, I mean, you know, the statistics suggest it's 70%, or at least, even allowing for a huge margin of error, it's more than half. So drinkers like me and you, and you know, and others we know, well, the trouble is we think everyone drinks like that because subconsciously we surround ourselves with people who drink like us. Now, when I went to university, you know, by the time I'd finished after 4 years, let's say I'd made 30 good friends, straight acquaintances, you know, close friends, good friends. You know, by an astounding coincidence, they all drank. And the vast majority drank like me. So we think, well, everybody drinks like me. It's like social norming, you know. It reinforces and almost legitimizes and excuses your behaviour or your life choices because it's the same thing happening.
It's really, I think it's revealing you're mentioning university there, because again, in that A.A. Gill piece, the people who are out until 4 or 5 in the morning, they're young people, right? They're teenagers, etc. And it's in that formative time of your life, you're kind of telling the stories about yourself and learning who you are and trying to weave your own legend, I guess, as he puts it.
But you can have a legend without drinking. There's people who don't drink at all, who have their legends.
They have a good time.
Well, they're incredible, but they can have a good time, you know.
But the other thing he talks about is that actually in Cleethorpes, where that was, they're actually quite a fundamental part of the local economy. You know, taxi drivers, even the police officers who are cleaning up the mess, you know, takeaways, the clubs, the pubs, etc. And that in certain parts of England where that was written in 2013, I think, you know, the problems are more acute now in terms of deprivation and the running down of local communities, the local high street. But actually, it sits quite prominently and importantly within the local economy. It's not just about
but no one's saying you can't have. I mean, no one's saying you can't have that. And also, I mean, the worry I have, you know, I'd spend time in Birmingham. There's a scene in the book where I get smashed in Cleethorpes, by the way, glad to see Grimsby Town away with that judge who I mentioned. But anyway,
serendipitous then.
Yes, but I say, you know, Birmingham, I look at Broad Street. It's like, you know, Valhalla like Sodom and Gomorrah on a Friday, Saturday night.
I know someone who's at uni there right now.
Yeah, but then it was like that first day's drinking when I was making the programme in the Vine near West Brom before we played Liverpool that day. I went out the back and spoke, and there was a load of Scousers sort of pissed up basically there, and I was talking to them about the drinking and everything. And it's, I mean, the two blokes I spoke to drank once a week. When it was when they went to see Liverpool. When they went to see Liverpool, they had a drink, otherwise they didn't at all. So in total, they'd be drinking much, much less than me. So all those people in Cleethorpes or Broad Street, I would wager, as I walked down though, if I walked through Cleethorpes or walked down Broad Street, looking around at, you know, these scenes unfold, ghastly scenes unfolding everywhere, I bet you I'd drink more than 90% of them over the course of a week. Now, it won't affect my behaviour in the same way, and I won't be smashed, but nevertheless.
Because culturally in Britain, isn't it? It's binge drinking, isn't it? Maybe it is typical. You know more about this than I do, but it is. You're right. It's once or twice a week, but it's to the maximum.
But that disguises things. I mean, I'm pretty sure that levels of abstinence in this country are highest in Scotland and Ireland. So, yet the consumption is the highest. The consumption per person is the highest in those areas, because on average, so what that tells you, those who are doing it are really going for it. So, but yes, it's, you know, that's, and it's a flaw in the book, if you like, that, and it was picked out by this therapist I was talking to. I was talking about how the first drink really is the only one that affects you. That achieves the change of state, and every subsequent drink is just a vain attempt to recreate the feeling that first gave you.
Chasing it.
And then, but each one has less and less effect. And the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the more you drink, the more, there's a big pro and no con with the first drink. Same probably with the second. Third, fourth, fifth, the pros kind of disappear and it's just all cons, And I was talking to this therapist about it, and she said, and I said, if you can keep your mind on that, you should be all right. And she said, well, and I think that's true. If you can keep that in your thinking, that's fine. But then the question is, she said, she put it to me, and I hadn't thought of it. She said, excuse me. She said, yeah, but what if you're drinking for Oblivion? I went, yeah. Because look, and if you're drinking for Oblivion, then there's something else going on. I know one thing for sure. Moderation isn't going to work for you, because if it's Oblivion you're after, maybe you're entitled to go for Oblivion, I don't know, but it's... And the other thing that caught me, sorry to bang on, but I think it's important, and it was through another moderating drinker who I spoke to, called Marissa Bate, writer, and she said, and she successfully moderated. She said, but the difficult thing is that when we talk about controlling alcohol or controlling anything, is it actually, she said that involves about thinking of the consequences, thinking what are the pros and cons of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth drink, etc., all the things we've spoken about, and about your health as you grow older and blah blah blah. He said that runs against almost all the advice you get elsewhere as regards mental health, which is the power of now. Live in the moment. Don't worry about the past or the future. Just be here, present in the moment. So what do? If you're absolutely present in the moment, you just keep fucking drinking and to hell with the consequences. I mean, I know that that's an oversimplification of what a therapist would tell you, but it's there's definitely a clash there, I think.
No, I understand absolutely what you're saying, and I think there can often be quite a toxicity to some of that wellness advice, which is think about yourself all the time. I don't think it doesn't talk about structural things. But on this point about Oblivion, I was chatting to a reverend who was a life coach once, and he told me he was sat on the tube, and it was late on a Friday night, and a woman comes on who was absolutely out of her head, but could still hold a conversation. And he was sober, and he said to her, "Why do you do it?" And she said, "Because I want to forget." She worked in a call centre 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and her night out was the opportunity where she could be someone else. And I guess you're right. The lessons of moderation are particularly difficult for someone like that. I don't know if you'll ever get there.
I mean, there's other ways. Yes, look, and I understand that. And look, if your life's that bleak or boring, then you need drink to completely put it out of your head. Then, I'm certainly not going to tell anybody not to do it. But I would say there's another. There must be other ways of doing it. It was interesting. I did that. I got bullied into doing the Strictly Christmas special last year, where I went away with my wife we went to Wales on holiday. I said, we're not doing anything. And the next, we'll just, no work, nothing. And then the next thing I know, Strictly refused to take no for an answer and packed a champion Polish Latin dancer on the train to Swansea to come and teach me over 8 consecutive days in the village hall. I had to dance from scratch, and I had no idea. Anyway, she said something to me interesting. We got to I got to know more about the nature of dancers. I just thought how fascinating the actual professional dancers were. They were just really interesting to talk to. But I mean, she's very shy, and she's got outside dancing. Bluntly, didn't seem to have any interest really. Just like we said, my wife said, what are the good Polish restaurants in London? And she said, oh, I don't know. I never go out really. I'm just always dancing. And she's been here 3 years. Never been outside London. You said, "What's you been to Wales before?" No, I've never been outside London. Anyway, she said, "I'm not." And I'm not I'm absolutely not criticising her. This isn't to sort of demean her in any way. But she said, I said, so why do you like dancing? She says, and I just seen her. With me, it was like the wolf, sort of Viennese, just all very correct in a, frilly dress and everything. But then I saw her in one of the group dances they do on the main Saturday show, and she was like an absolute vixen in it. I thought, I just didn't recognise this woman, entirely different personality. And then bearing that in mind, I said, so why do you like dancing? She says, because I can be anybody. I can just be anybody in that moment. So I can, so in a way she said, I'm a blank canvas. I can just project myself onto any role at all in that moment. And I thought that was so interesting. And in a way, look, I'm not saying, to be a champion Latin dancer is the only way not to use alcohol to forget yourself. But I mean, I think there's something in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with you. Why do you think we treat alcohol differently to other drugs? And when I say we, I mean sort of socially, and the fact that we can sit here with 3 cameras pointing at, me drinking a pint.
Because it's just been there longer.
Yeah.
It's just been there longer. It doesn't mean we shouldn't redefine it. I mean, when I talk about vegetarianism to my dad, he goes, well, I've been, people have always eaten meat. Okay, animals eat meat. Well, animals, dogs sniff each other's asses. We don't do that. But also to say we've always done it is what we've always done it. We've always eaten meat is an argument. There's all sorts of things we've always done. Subjugated women. We've always done. So we, crack on with that. Enslave people. Well, we always have. All right, well, that's fine then. Let's carry on. It's mad. It's a mad argument. And you will have people who say that, like, alcohol, the Plato did it or whatever bullshit they come up with. Yeah, it's probably true. But, it doesn't mean you don't need to change your attitude to it. But, I mean, the answer to your original question, it's just been about longer. I mean, and I don't know, it's just socially acceptable. And I'm, in a way, perhaps we should see it as a relatively cheap, and drug. Just a way of self-medicating, and if you can use it correctly, just accept that's what it is. But I think, in the book I talk about meeting David Knott, Professor David Knott, who's the psychopharmacologist called, so very eminent in this field, was the government's drug tsar, and he got in trouble for saying, I'll probably misquote him, but I think he said taking E is safer than horse riding or something. Anyway, that's got him the sack. And I was talking to him on a chat show, and I said, so I've never taken drugs, so what's a good entry level drug? What should I try? Cannabis, cocaine, whatever. And he wasn't born yesterday, so he didn't fall for that one. And then afterwards, in the bar afterwards, he came up to me and he said, I thought you said you didn't take drugs. I said, I don't. And then I had a glass of red wine in my hand. He said, well, what's that? And I said, absolutely. It's absolutely a fair point.
I was going to actually ask you, because of his study where if you took into context not just the damage to the individual, but to the damage to society, he had this big study which said that alcohol was actually the most damaging drug that we have available to us because of the consequences to social relationships, whether it's the emergency services having to deal with illness or violence or whatever. And I think that ties into the social. That's why it's so interesting to me, the social relationship with it, because in theory, it's far worse for us than any of the things that are kind of stigmatised.
Well, it is. Well, in practice, it is. And look, there are benefits from it, which I would argue you could still, I'm still getting the same benefits from drinking less. But if we all drank within the guidelines, a lot of drinks companies would be in an awful lot of trouble. Hang on a minute, we just got to go. And it's and their profits do largely come, I think, from drinkers like me, the minority who are drinking more, in some cases much more than 14 units a week.
Coming towards the end of our conversation together, there's something else I've got to ask you about.
Yeah.
The urinal in your flat.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I would turn it around and say, why not? I mean, I just don't.
I've never considered it, to be honest with you, until I saw you'd written about it.
Particularly if you're in a relationship where, I don't know, the women in my life and have always complained about the toilet seat not being down, splashes and everything, which is a fair point. But it's not. Ordinary toilets aren't designed for blokes to wee in. Unless you're very short or very long in another sense, then you're gonna miss the target. So since I had room, why not just stick a urinal in? And it's nice. It's a knob height. In it goes. Even got a little lid. Flush it. Bob's your uncle. And and everyone's happy. And then I think it's weird. It's not that I hadn't mentioned it before. I mentioned it before. There's been a picture in the paper before, but then I wrote about it in the Guardian piece. Basically, out of sheer desperation, I couldn't have anything else to write that week, and all of a sudden the world goes mad. Everyone's talking about urinal. It's trending in America. It's just bizarre. And then there was some story, surely made up, saying urinal sales have rocketed or something. But I've often wondered.
You've moved the market.
Yeah. Who would pay me to endorse their products? And I've never come up with anything, but this urinal is the thing.
Yeah.
Urinal. My own urinal range.
Yeah, nice. Put your face in the back of it or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that one way, people who didn't like you might buy it, so they can piss on your face.
I'm aware of this because, as you said, you wrote about it in the Guardian, and the headlines in particular around your column have kind of developed a bit of a cult reverence for them.
Funnily enough, I've always moaned about the headlines and thought they were shit, but since they work, I mean, sometimes I think they're brilliant, but I mean, they know more about the headline.
Are you aware of the sort of the cult-like status that they've gathered?
Well, I'm never quite sure what it's. I mean, half the time they're sort of taking the piss, and but to which I'd say, look, try writing a fucking column. I'm doing 3.5 years, 1,000 words a week.
Yeah.
About anything. I mean, if you said, "Look, I've got a beer column," or about motoring, or about parenting, or about fucking nasal hair, or something, and I've got to do something every week, that's easier than writing about sort of nothing and everything. But yeah, there have been some, there have been some crackers for sure. Go on, which ones? Are you?
I've got a few here.
Go on.
I recently saw something in a petrol station toilet southbound on the M1 that I can never unsee.
Yeah.
Which I thought was unreal.
Well, I mean, that was a line from the piece. I was just talking about how public toilets, not like public conveniences, but in places like pubs and restaurants or petrol stations, for some reason they just don't seem to clean them.
Yeah.
They don't pay enough for people to clean them. I'm not blaming the cleaners, but anyway, I happen to have a bad experience in an unnamed service station southbound on the M1, which I thought, well, I've got a column to write and I can put a few people to write.
Okay, very good. Next one. Could sitting in a salt cave cure my nasal congestion? Question mark.
Well, that was somewhere me and a mate of mine, Tim Marshall, who you might know, wrote the book Power of Geography. And
Prisoners of Geography, yeah.
Yeah, Prisoners of Geography, brilliant. Anyway, it's a mate of mine. And it was somewhere, in fact, we wrote our respective books sitting opposite each other in a little rented office space we had. But then he said he went to this place because it helped with his breathing, and I just found it really relaxing. Although I found I mean, I don't know whether I've written this, but there's more. I mean, my breathing through my nose improved exponentially when I read a book called Breathe by a bloke called James Nestor, who, a long story short, pointed out that, well, the essential message was we don't breathe through our noses enough, so we become mouth breathers. And this has evolved over the years, actually changed the shape of our heads. And I know this is true because I've spoken to some medics about it, who are experts in that field. But I wasn't breathing through my nose because I found it difficult to breathe through my nose, but I was finding it difficult to breathe through my nose because I wasn't breathing through my nose. So what he advocates is taping your mouth at night. Put a little bit of tape there, so you breathe through your nose at night. And I've carried on doing that in fact, I don't do it so much anymore because I've just coached myself into breathing through my nose more, which keeps it clearer than it was. So this is the best I've breathed in ages, and it wasn't. Well, it might have been the salt cave. I think it was probably tape in my mouth.
Probably the sellotape. I've got a couple more for you, if you don't mind. I've decided what to do with the rest of my life. Grow a lemon tree.
Yeah. Well, I had the lemon tree. I had a pip, and I planted this pip, and then it feels like an absolute miracle. Up comes the little thing, and it grew and grew and it grew until it was about a metre tall. There was no sign of a lemon. I wondered whether it would ever happen, but I kept it there. If you scratch the leaves, they smell a bit lemony. Then I was listening to Gardener's Question Time, and they said it'd take 20 years for a lemon to appear. And I said, well, I'll be 73 by the time this produces a lemon.
It'll taste good though by that time.
Well, will it? I don't know. Depends where you live. It'll probably be a small, unpardonably sour little thing.
Probably.
So, I mean, why not write that? I mean, somebody needs to say these things. I've got one that's crying out for a headline doing it that I'm going to do when I next get a chance. I've worn glasses since I was 13. They slip down my fucking nose all the time. We can get a man on the moon. We can invent phones without actual cords to them. Cordless phones, they've been invented, But glasses the whole time, pushing them up the whole time. I found something called I won't name the brand because I don't want to really dump on them, but it just didn't work. It made my nose slippier. It didn't stick, it made my nose slippier. And then there's some other nose pads you can get, that didn't work. I actually tried a prick stick the other day to actually literally glue them on, especially when it's hot. Anyway, so that'll be another easily
headline.
A headline easily sort of parodied. Anyway, go on.
I'll ask viewers to suggest the headline for that. I've got one last one for you. What is an app? I honestly have no idea.
Well, that's because my old man. He looks at his iPod not even iPod, his iPhone just in bewilderment, and it's like he looks at it like this is the moment he knows his life is coming to the end because the world's passed him by, and he paws a bit at the screen, and he goes, "What is an app? What is an app?" But I said, "Well, it's just the app. It's just, yeah, but what is it?" I said, I don't know how to explain it. It just is. If you want to buy a train ticket, you go on the whatever app to do it. But the more I explained it, the more I confused him. A similar one is podcasts, which annoys me as well. What is a podcast? Well, it's basically just a radio program on demand, is what it is. I don't know why we have to do a different name for him, but that absolutely flummoxes him as well. So I've got some sympathy. And look, as you get nearer to that age yourself, you start realising there will be things which, we don't get. I don't get, it drives me bloody mad with my old man that he won't learn how to text because he's hard of hearing. And how his hearing goes, he literally can't communicate with him by phone, but he stubbornly refused to text. And I don't want to be like that, I've got to some extent, you've got to move along with the times a bit.
Whether we all will or not.
Yeah, well, exactly. And what will it be like? I'm not getting in my space machine that lets you go to Mars. No, it's not for me, that. I get sick.
Getting a microchip stuck in the back of your head.
Yeah.
Adrian Chiles, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Really appreciate it. Good drinker. Do you want to give it a little plug?
It's just called The Good Drinker, How I Learned to Love Drinking Less. I'm not very good at... I keep giving copies away. I've got some copies in my bag, and somebody says, I like your column. Oh, do you want my book? Yeah. I'm going to end up giving most away. Thank you very much.
Oh, there we go.
There it is.
There it is.
And I look a mess on the cover as well. Look, I thought I was dressed smart, but I wasn't. Anyway, there it is.
Cheers, Adrian. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. All the best. Get the beers in now. I'll have 6 pints of Guinness. Thank you very much. And a whiskey chaser as well. All right.